Hi, this is Vignesh from Kalere.in e-learning platform. Now we are going to know how to model this bottle design by using often surface tools and solid tools. Okay, let's cover each and every topics related to that. First, select a top plane and create two different planes. One is an under 67 mm of distance, another one is an 134 mm of distance. That is an initial portions we are going to create it at this area. The total distance from bottom to this particular area is 134 mm. So from the half of the section is 67. So let's create two different planes in order. Once we created this particular portions, then select a top plane and create a new sketch. Draw a primary circular profile. It is having the diameter value of 72 mm. If you look at the bottom profiles, this dimensions is initiated properly, 72 mm. Then exit the sketch. Afterwards, choose this plane one and create new sketch. Then draw a circular. Here we are not going to draw a circular profile. We are going to draw a primary ellipse profile. If you look at the top dimensions, there is an 82 mm horizontal and 73 mm vertical. First, draw an ellipse profile and choose an horizontal points, fix it with this origin using horizontal constraints. Now, what is the dimensions for this horizontal area? It is 82 mm. Then the vertical dimension is 73 mm. Once it is mentioned, the profile is almost fixed now. Then exit the sketch. Afterwards, choose this plane 2 and draw on another circular profile. Here, if you look at the drawing, the diameter symbol is mentioned with the value of 68 mm. So draw a circular profile at this area, then mention with this dimensions of 68 mm at the top of its profile. Once we draw three different closed profiles at three different planes, now we are going to draw an open profile to close at both the top profiles as well as the bottom one. We need to make a proper aligned surface at this area. That's why I draw this open profile. Draw an arc from connecting a two opposite endpoints and selecting this point. Make it using and pierce constraints at this bottom of its area. Also choose this point piercing at the top of the circular profile. Now, using a coincide constraints to fix it at the center of its portions. Exit the sketch at this area, then choose a surface, boundary surface, and selecting a three different profiles at one direction and another open profiles at in direction 2. If this profiles is not meet our recommended surface portion means, now look at this, at the right hand area, the profile is not properly created. So what we are going to do in this portion is create another open profiles at this opposite end. So draw a 3-point arc, close the two opposite portions. One is in using and pierce constraints. Next another one using and pierce constraints to close it on this opposite area. Then coincide with this ellipse profile at the center of its portions. Then what we are going to do now, choose this boundary surface. Now selecting a three different profiles in order. Afterwards, in direction 2, selecting the two opposite open arc profile. Okay, once the open arc profile is created, the proper surface portion, the bottom surface portion is created. Now what I'm going to do is selecting a front plane and creating a sketch, draw a stepped profile for the initiating the thread sections, also the bottom of this closed portions. First draw a stepped profiles, one by one, horizontal, a complete profiles. Then draw a bottom one. Draw a horizontal line up to this particular portions. Then using an arc profile to draw an arc by closing this opposite points. What we are going to do now, choose this point as well as the circular edges, make it using an pierce constraints. Afterwards, we fix it using as dimensions. Just to draw a horizontal line and make it a tangential connections for this arc area. Let's use the smart dimensions one by one and fix it in orderly at the top of its portions. Before that, we just need to draw a vertical center line to fix this profile at each and every area one by one. First, the initial dimensions on the center of its portions. Initial dimensions for this area is 55 mm diameter. So mention this 55 mm diameter. Then the another profile is under 58 mm of diameter. So mention this 58 mm of diameter. If you look at the right section view, it is clearly explained on this area. Then the step total vertical dimensions is 16 mm. If you look at the right section view, also the front view, it is clearly explained 16 mm as well as a 3 mm on these portions. This is the stepped sections 3 mm right away. Let's fix this bottom of this profiles. The R profile is positioned under from the bottom dimension is 4 mm. It is mentioned on the section view area 4 mm. Then fix this profile horizontally. It is offsetted at the distance of 20 mm. Exit the sketch and form a revolved surface from these portions. Before that, I can use a fillet on the sharp edges area. It is a 10 mm of radius. So mention this 10 mm of radius. Now exit the sketch. Choose revolved surface and selecting this vertical center line to create a surface at 360 degree. Now, what we are going to do, select a front plane to create a pocket portions, which is slightly create a tangential bend on this area. So select a front plane and create a new sketch. Draw a two different midpoint line. If you look at this, there is a small stepped portions on this bottle area to for an holding positions. Draw a midpoint line in both the top end as well as in bottom end. Once we draw a horizontal line profile, then using a midpoint constraints to fix it and align it equally from the origin point. Now, what is the total dimensions for this area? It is 90 mm. The total dimension is 90 mm. The horizontal dimension is 25 mm. Fix it using an equal constraints on two opposite line profiles. Then draw an vertical line, center line by connecting a two opposite points. It is easy to give the dimensions also. Now give the overall dimensions 90 mm. Afterwards, from the center point of the line to the origin, fix this with the vertical dimensions of 67 mm. Now close these two arcane, first one and the second one. Next what we are going to do is, from the center point, mention the horizontal dimensions of 18 mm. What is the dimensions? 18 mm of value. Mention it. Same as like selecting this point, selecting both the R profile and make it into an equal constraints. Then we need to form a fillet at 4 different corner portions under the radius of 5 mm. So using a 5 mm of radius, selecting each and every corner point. That is a 4 different corners. Once you mention the radius, just exit the sketch and form a pocket by using of trim surface. Choose a trim surface and remove this excess number of the portions at two opposite ends using this in single sketch profile. Now we are going to create a new plane. So select a front plane and go to reference geometry plane. Afterwards, the half of the section, that is a 73 mm divided by 2, is nothing but 37.5 mm. Sorry, 36.5 mm minus 5 mm, that is 31.5 mm. Once we created this plane, selecting these planes and initiate a new sketch, then choose an offset entities from this previous sketch, initiating the distance of 3 mm, that is an offset distance, then change these directions. Then exit the sketch. Afterwards, choose as a filled surface. Now selecting the overall tangential edges as well as the sketches to form a surface, initial surface. Again, selecting this, close the sketch using a filled surface to close this area. Same as like we need to create at the opposite ends. What I am going to do is choose a mirror. Now, from the bodies, I am going to pick this two different surface. Once it is created, next what we are going to do right now, choose a surface, select knit surface. Afterwards, before that, we need to close the top end of this open portions by using of a filled surface. Now use a knit surface in this area. Choose a knit surface, selecting each of its every individual surface portion one by one from the both front end as well as the rear end. Once it is selected, if you normally select a check button or the top of its portion means it generally created only a surface area. If you use an section view, it is clearly determines it is a surface portion. Now again go back to that knit surface, then choose a create solid. Then it is changed this surface portion into a solid body. If you again use a section view, it clearly indicates it is a solid model. Now choose a shell features. Then what is the thickness for this area? It is 2 mm of thickness. So mention 2 mm of thickness. Then choose an show preview. Change its direction and selecting this top face. Remove this top faces. This is the exact bottle design is created. Next to the only simple thing we need to do in this area is form a fillet first. Choose a fillet and creating the sharp edge portions to create that. Also, form a helix curve in this area. First, selecting the top faces and using convert entities to make it into a current sketch. Afterwards, prefer the helix curve. And what is the total revolutions? Two different revolutions under the distance of 13 minus 2.6. 13 is the half section area minus 2.6 is the top one. So, initiate this dimensions 13 minus 2.6. Okay, once the surface portions, that is a profile is created on the helix curve area, now check OK. Look at these portions. This is a helix curve under two different revolutions. Both starting point as well as an ending point determines the same conditions as well as the same angle point. Now, prefer a respective planes. That is what I am going to choose a front plane and draw a trapezoid profiles in this area. This profiles is clearly indicated on the detailed view. So let's select this front plane and create a new sketch. Now draw a exact closed profile portions in these locations. Draw a trapezoid profile angularly. Draw a complete section in this area from the top one to bottom one. Draw an triangular line. Close these portions. Then mention the dimensions one by one. The first value is 1.5. So mention this value on this area. Total number of distance, that is the thickness is 1.5. Afterwards, initiating the primary vertical line. We not have the enough dimensions, so choose a small line profile and mention the dimensions of 0.7. Afterwards, this is not an horizontal line. This is some kind of an angular profile. So selecting this angular geometrical constraints and delete it. Afterwards, mention the dimensions value, angular value. It is nothing but 3 degree. So slightly we just changing these points and constrain it at the angular value of 3 degree. Afterwards, what is this initial angular value 30 degree? Mention this angular value. The total profile is fixed under this kind of a dimensions also fully constrained. Next thing we need to do is, if you have a trapezoid profile and draw it from this angular circular edges, means basically it not created properly. That's why we just extend the small projections randomly. Why means then only the solid body or is merged with the default body. Now choose a swept options. Then selecting these profiles. If you want to merge it to the opposite section, what we need to do is choose an aligned with faces, aligned with end faces. It is automatically merged with the bottom of this faces area. That's all. We completely design this bottle design by from the surface tool transfer into a solid body using net surface itself. Okay, this is a simple product design only. If you want to learn lot more complex product design, learn surface modeling design course.